The three-quarters mark of the House of Mrth by three-quarters mark for Chapter 9 of the House of Mrth, Book 1 by Edith Wharton, where, yes, Lily Bart has come back to her aunt's place to stay, Mrs. Penston, Peniston, Penston, Mrs. Penston, yes, for and just going to stay there until the holidays, which neither party seems to think is great. Lily is more entertaining to be with, but there's another older cousin who is actually probably better for, like, cleaning and advice on house stuff, because like Lily is pretty impractical. She just thinks the house should just keep itself clean, kind of that. Lily gets a visit from the charwoman. It turns out the charwoman is indeed working there, and we have a repetition of her spotting Lily as she is bent over scrubbing the floor and kind of regarding her silently and not moving out of her way. This time she's on her home ground, so she tells her to get the fuck out of her way. She does without word, without an excuse. And then later she comes back and says, I've got something. I've got something of yours. And Lily's like, what on earth could you have of mine? And she comes out with a bunch of letters that she says, like, well, most gentlemen, a lot of gentlemen are pretty careless with their letters, though Mr. Lawrence Selden, for the most part, usually burns them in the winter time or tears them up into tiny little pieces in the summer spring. I guess showing that she's often scouting through people's garbage, even though she claims this is the one and only time she's done what she's about to do, which is, I have letters, and she presents them, and it's like Lily's like, okay, I recognize the handwriting. I've never actually exchanged letters or had letters that I need to worry about with Lawrence Selden. They're not me. They're Bertha Dorset, married Mrs. George Dorset, wife. And they're letters that seem to have Bertha basically pleading for a renewal of affections that maybe Lawrence Selden and she were exchanging at one point, probably when she was married, perhaps maybe beforehand, before she was married. Obviously unanswered, but Selden has been very careless and just kind of gone rip and thrown them in the garbage. Perhaps kind of a signal of just exactly how annoying and maybe how many of these letters he's gotten from Bertha Dorset. So Mrs. Harmston, who's she's had a sickness, and what is it? Make sure I get the name right. Mrs. Haffen, Haffen, is like, I want to sell them to you, and names an exorbitant price. And so Lily goes through a couple of calculations of this. It's like, well, it's got nothing to do with her, so there's that. And as these things go, usually the guy in the situation, when it's like a married woman and a dude, it's the married woman who's going to catch it. But him being so careless with the letters will count against him, and maybe she wants to preserve that. She's got certain feelings for Lawrence Selden. Maybe there's uses for Lawrence Selden, and there's also the calculations of, like, well, what kind of if I present them back to Bertha Dorset, maybe I'll have something, get some capital there as well. So she does negotiate for them and gets them, and they do have a negotiation over it because, yeah, Miss Haffen names an exorbitant price. She does half, and yeah, they dicker, and she ends up with the letters, and it's like, well, should I burn them immediately? Because like that's what I should do. Unfortunately, she can't burn them in this room because her aunt never lights up There's no active fire going, and it would be highly suspicious if she did. So she's got them in her hands, and she's kind of considering what to do. At which point, Miss Penson arrives and comes into the room while she's got them wrapped up in a filthy newspaper, which she's like, ew, I'm even touching this. This is gross, kind of thing. So we've got, yes, Lily calculating, as always, calculating. And Yes. So she's got stuff. And it's like, should I read them? That would be bad. So I figure she'll read them. All right, we'll leave it there at the moment. More videos later.